Bears 31, Cowboys 14. We've got the Chicago Bears. Let's start with them, the winning team. What did you think watching the Bears in this game, Chris? Big performance from Caleb Williams with 4 touchdowns through the air.
He looked a little bit more comfortable in Ben Johnson's scheme as compared to the past couple of weeks. Fewer false start penalties and some of those infractions where a lot of the things need to be in rhythm or you need to be in sync with the offense. And so seeing that, it gives me a little bit more hope about this pairing between Williams and Johnson moving forward. And of course, from the play calling standpoint, you have to believe that there's also some credence to what I was just saying about Williams having a better hold of the playbook. We saw that flea flicker to Luther Burden earlier in the game as well. A couple of trick plays here and there. So seeing Ben Johnson get a bit more into his bag, some of the same things that we saw out of him when he was in Detroit, at least gives me at least some more confidence that this is going to work out between the two of them. And while that's like a lot of us wanted to see more out of Rome Odunze or even folks that were holding on to DJ Moore, seeing at least more options for Caleb Williams and also him still being able to create out of structure. At least if you drafted Caleb Williams, you have to be happy about that. And of course, again, while we expected a bit more out of Rome Odunze, still seeing him find pay dirt on 4 or 5 targets. No, actually he was up to 6 or 7 targets if memory serves, but still being productive as that wide receiver 1 from the Bears. That's what you love to see.
Yeah, team high targets for Rome Odunze, 7 targets, 3 catches, 62 yards, and the touchdowns. Yeah, you were in the range there, buddy. And he had the one play where he probably could have caught another touchdown. He's like left a play or 2 on the field every single week, but he's still a young receiver that's getting better and better. His one touchdown did come on just an atrocious rep from Trayvon Diggs he's gonna want back. He left this game with an injury. He wasn't the only Cowboys big name player to leave with an injury. We'll get to them in just a second. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. This was the most comfortable I think that Caleb has looked in the offense. Now, obviously, it's a bad opponent. The Cowboys defense just stinks, but he nevertheless didn't take any sacks, didn't create negative plays, throws 4 touchdowns, and it was a little bit of a show-off game, I think, for Ben Johnson. You mentioned some of the trick plays. The big one was the Luther Burden touchdown where DeAndre Swift pitched it back. That ball was in the air for a while from DeAndre Swift. A little bit. Let's get this back to the quarterback because, Luther Burden just wide open down there. Now, Burden leads the team with 101 yards and a touchdown on just 3 catches, caught all 3 targets. He still ran just 9 routes, so it's not as if we've seen any big-time playing time changes here. 31% route participation, which is certainly higher than it was, but it's not like he overtook one of the top 2 receivers here. But the fact that Ben Johnson said, hey, we're going to increase the packages for Luther Burden. We want to get him more involved. They followed up on that promise. That's at least just, again, not a guy that you're playing in fantasy right now, but we want to continue to track that because he might be somebody that we play at some point. There were a couple other kind of tricky looking plays. Everybody kind of got involved here. Cole Kmet scored a touchdown. DJ Moore was super quiet throughout the course of the day, but he ends up getting a touchdown late in this one. DeAndre Swift has a couple of big plays in the passing game as well. So yeah, this was just kind of anything that you wanted to get, you can get it against that Cowboys defense. We'll see. It's a nice confidence builder, I think, for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson in their relationship together. Just don't expect 4 touchdowns from a fantasy standpoint every single week because that has a lot to do with the opponent here.
No, and for folks that are rostering Colston Loveland, he went out, I think, midway through the game with a hip injury, didn't return. So I'd say pay attention to that as we move into week 4, just from a waiver wire standpoint, if Loveland was your starting tight end.
Even he had a nice 31-yard reception, his lone catch of the day, but that was a nice catch by him. Cole Kmet might be a guy who ends up being playable. Maybe in deeper spots playable if Colston Loveland does miss time and he just consolidates all the tight end snaps there. Let's go to the team that lost this one. Cowboys. I really thought they'd be better against this Bears defense. What did you think watching this Cowboys team, which of course did lose their number 1 wide receiver? CeeDee Lamb left this game early. He tried to return and then immediately was out of this game. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones said after the game, the team doctors told him CeeDee Lamb's ankle injury is not as serious as it could have been. Quote, let's just keep our fingers crossed. So that stinks. Obviously losing your number 1 wide receiver. They don't have a lot of depth behind George Pickens. There's role players, but nevertheless, I did expect a bit of a better offensive performance from Dallas in this game. What did you think watching them on this one?
Anybody on this show take CeeDee Lamb as their first pick from primetime picks? Anybody? Anybody do that? Oh, that was me. That was me. Okay, yeah, that was me. So that was great to watch.
Cool.
But I'd say I would say the shocking thing out of this was it was good to see George Pickens getting involved a little bit more, 9 targets on the day, but of course that egregious drop that turned into the interception off of his hands there. But I was hoping to see a bit more from a production standpoint and actually see a little bit more of a switch up in terms of how he's deployed on the field. Now, this was something that they weren't really planning for, obviously, not having CeeDee Lamb on the field. We saw more of the underneath looks go to guys like Jalen Tolbert and, of course, Kevontae Turpin working in also from the slot. So I think that was my only disappointing thing from the Cowboys offense, where this is a guy that you paid quite a bit of money in order to acquire, and only seeing like that level of production from him. Whereas Jake Ferguson with 13 catches on the day is the one that's really taking a lot of the brunt of CeeDee Lamb not being in the lineup. So hopefully that starts to shift a bit moving forward. But otherwise, without having CeeDee Lamb on the field, you can see how this Cowboys offense kind of struggles without having their number one there.
Yeah, Pickens still target on 28% of his routes, according to the source I'm looking at right now, 2.12 yards per out run. So, like, it was a nice day for him. He had the one sick touchdown reception, but then gave the ball quite literally to the Bears. Yeah, so it's like that's the full George Pickens experience. Look, even if he's improved, he's still George Pickens, man. Like, there's going to be some boneheaded moments combined with some really nice moments, which is why he's a 2, not a 1. You don't want to have George Pickens as your 1. You want to have him as the 2. So not having CeeDee Lamb here is problematic. But I think one of the biggest points you made there is that we didn't see like a usage change for George Pickens after CeeDee Lamb goes down here. George Pickens, again, if the numbers I'm looking at right now are fully up to date, he only took 2.2 snaps in the slot, 2.2% snaps in the slot in this game. So it was like Jalen Tolbert is kind of replacing as the slot receiver. Kevontae Turpin's kind of replacing as the slot receiver. And that's just going to be tough for Pickens to have to both access a ceiling if there's no CeeDee Lamb and also have more of like a consistent floor that's not matchup based. So that is something that I maybe expected a little bit more varied usage from Pickens, but if he's purely just going to be the every down X receiver, there's absolutely going to be some volatility. But if you started him, you'll take 68 yards and a touchdown. You're just kind of
100%.
more.
Yeah.
One more update here on the Cowboys. Javonte Williams, who I took in the third round of our little draft on the Fantasy Football Live this morning, he still led the team with 15 touches, 92 total yards, but he did lose a fumble. That's another thing with Cowboys in this game is like turnovers really just killed some drives that ultimately just gave the Bears favorable positions. And once, like, if you're going to get a lead on this Cowboys defense, you're not gonna survive that without your number one receiver on the other side of it.
No, and just the weirdest fumble because it wasn't like he was going to the ground. And you know how typical running backs and their fumbles, they're going to the ground and having to either protect themselves or try and maintain some sort of balance and the ball gets punched out. He was running down the sideline and the defender just came up and grabbed it out of his hands and stole his lunch money. It was just the weirdest sequence right there for Williams. But it was good to see Shoddy go back to him and continue to use him. Of course, Miles Sanders did mix in for a bit, but like we were talking about earlier this morning, the fact that they were going up against the Bears defense, having the number of rushing lanes that Williams did, I mean, picked up a lot of chunk runs. I mean, not that we like to use yards per carry, but seeing him average like 6 to 7 per tote, I mean, solid output. But of course, having the fumble and then not really being mixed in enough from a pass game standpoint to really offset some of that. I mean, yeah, 5 for 16 from receiving standpoint from Williams, but I would say that it's the rushing portion. We were hoping to really see him get into the box against this Bear defense. So better days ahead, hopefully, but still, he's in control of the backfield, so I'm not too concerned about his output moving forward.
All right, let's get to a game that was actually competitive here now that we got that one out of the way since it just wrapped up. Let's get to Eagles 33, Rams 26. Early in the third quarter, yeah, what a wild finish to this one. One of many wild finishes. Early in the third quarter, the Rams led this game 26-7. Then somebody went down to Kevin Patullo, Eagles offensive coordinator, who I don't think is impressed over the first 3 weeks. Somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, Hey, Kev, big dog. You know that you have like some of the best collection of receiving talent in the NFL. Suddenly, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith kind of go crazy. They combined for 14 catches, 169 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 19 targets in this game. And of course, the game finished with a wild just blocked field goal by Jordan Davis, who returned it for a touchdown, almost cracked 19 miles an hour. I saw Nate Tice tweet that out according to Next Gen Stats.
Big
so
man.
Wild finish to this one. But yeah, the big man was rolling. They were talking about how in shape he had gotten. Well, it showed on this one. So what did you think seeing the Eagles passing game suddenly return to light here, Chris?
Well, here was the jailbreak type situation that you would want to have for Jalen Hurts, whereas beforehand the Eagles were at least in somewhat control of the previous two matches. So having him drop back, I mean, he had 37 dropbacks in this game. That's the most on the season. Having him throw farther downfield, 8.6 air yards per attempt. That's also the most for the season. And that's where you get that production to guys like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So while I'm not, I say that you were talking earlier today about trying to at least have continued trust in a guy like A.J. Brown. These are those types of situations where you know that those two, like the talent that they have, and also how often Jalen Hurts is going to be looking for them. I know there was a shift to more running backs and tight ends in week one. Over 3/4 of attempts were going back to wide receivers last week, and it was the same for this week. We just need that production to get there. So I'm not too terribly concerned about like A.J. Brown, Devonta moving forward. I'm not looking at this as a fluke. I'm thinking this is more of how they want to try and operate moving forward. So still, it was good to see both of the wide receivers get into the box. And so to give fantasy managers a bit more confidence starting them in the future.
Yeah, I mentioned that A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith combined for 14 catches, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. 11 of those catches and 136 of those yards came on throws outside the numbers, which is very classic Eagles under Jalen Hurts. Like, we're pushing the ball deep outside the numbers. He's not a perfect quarterback. He's not a perfect passer, especially like working and matriculating the offense in the quick game or over the middle of the field. But he's really good on those deeper passes outside the numbers. And this felt like a moment where maybe the light came on and it was just like, oh, right, like this is how we run this passing game. And I do think the Rams were selling out a little bit to stop the run. Saquon, by the way, this season is averaging 3.3 yards per carry. I'm wondering if that's concerning to you all or concerning to you at all so far this year. But it felt like they were kind of keying in. They didn't want to let up those long runs that they let up multiple times last season to Saquon. And those Rams corners, as good as that defense is, the corners are an issue in isolated coverage like that, specifically in these tight windows that A.J. Brown was winning in all day.
Not too concerned about Saquon. He still had over 90% of the team's running back carries. And for folks that drafted Saquon in the early rounds, these were the types of games that you potentially signed up for, because Hurts and the tush push, that's sometimes how they wind up getting into the end zone. So if we are getting most of the running back carries for Saquon out of the Eagles backfield, and he's also mixing in the passing game, he got 5 targets in this matchup, I would say that you kind of take your lumps and you take the highs with the lows for somebody like Saquon, and you go on about your business and hope for better production in week 4, because the opportunity is definitely going to be there for him.
All right. On the Rams side of things here, like I said, this was shaping up to be a win from them before just A.J. Brown decided to take the game over. Jalen Hurts decided to take the game over. We learned a few things about their offense, though. Number one, Kyren Williams had 22 touches to 8 for Blake Corum. So Kyren Williams continues to be the guy for the Rams. They might mix Blake Corum in a little bit, but if you were kind of scared off on reports over the course of this week, it looks like that was a little bit unfounded. In the passing game, Chris, Puka Nacua remains a machine. I mean, he's like the favorite to lead the league in receiving yards right now, would be my guess. According to our guy, Joel Smith, Puka Nacua is the first wide receiver with 330-plus receiving yards and no touchdowns in the first 3 games since Puka Nacua in 2023. So got to get him a receiving touchdown. He doesn't have that one long rush from a touchdown perspective, but Davante Adams in this game, he did have the one touchdown where he was kind of in zone coverage there, ends up being guarded by Reed Blankenship. But NFL Pro notes that otherwise, Quinyon Mitchell shadowed Davante Adams on 79.4% of his routes, which it's the first game in Mitchell's career where he shadowed a receiver on over 60% of their routes, and he allowed just 2 catches for 12 yards on 5 targets to Adams. So, I mean, listen, Adams had the big play. Like, that's what you're going to want to see. But that Eagles defense did make it hard on the Rams, like, passing game deep in this particular contest.
And I was maybe foolishly thinking that Sean McVay might get into his bag and say, well, I've got these two awesome wide receivers, but here are some ancillary guys we want to get mixed into in order to fool you. No, they weren't doing any of that. No. It was still 80%, over 80% of the routes for both those guys. I mean, Jordan Whittington, 30% of the routes. Tutu Atwell, 40% of the routes. Tyler Higbee, less than half of the routes. So it really is just Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua producing most of whatever it is that Stafford's spinning down the field. So my general takeaway from this is you only want three guys from this offense. It's Kyren Williams, it's Puka Nacua, it's Devontae Adams. After that, I have zero interest in even trying to roster anybody with LAR sticking next to their name for the time being.